Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Unfolding Enneagram podcast. Y'all, I am very excited to have with me on the podcast today, Kelsi Grove. I feel like this is like old home week, like a class reunion, because I will just introduce her first of all by saying Kelsi and I met online in an Enneagram apprenticeship coaching program. And we just, over 6 months, the whole class bonded. And I'm very, very happy to have Kelsi on today because she has a special approach to how she uses the Enneagram. She is a type 9. She identifies with the energy of a type 9. And first of all, I just want to ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us what you do.
Yeah, very much so identify with the type 9 and for better or for worse, like every aspect. Yeah, so I'm a licensed professional counselor in the Kansas City area. I moved here from Nebraska actually almost 10 years ago now. So in addition to doing therapy with people, I teach dance. That was part of the big thing that brought me to Kansas City in the first place, was to kind of pursue that. So yeah, passionate about bringing the Enneagram into, really everything, but especially my work too. Outside of that, I am pretty laid back as a type 9. I like going to the dog park and reading. Love naps, even though that's super stereotypical. I've always loved naps. But recently I've gotten more into, trying to connect back to my body and everything, weightlifting. And I think that's been really, really cool to connect to myself in that way.
Backtrack just a little bit. What kind of dance do you teach in addition to being a licensed therapist?
Yeah. So I teach mostly advanced students. So like 8th grade and up at a local studio here. And I teach some of their competitive routines, choreograph some of their competitive routines. And then we have like a technique and conditioning class that I teach weekly with them as well.
Is this the only reason I ask is because I grew up in not me personally, but my daughter, in the clogging world. And I bet that's not the kind of dance you teach, is it?
No, I don't do any clogging, but there are at the competitions my girls go to. There is some clogging entries sometimes. So those worlds collide.
It's a whole different world.
Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter-in-law is a professional dancer, and it's, ballet and all sorts of beautiful choreography. She dances with the Lion King. I'll plug her.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So that's a whole different dance than clogging. But anyway, I diverted because I love that you do that. And that's, to me, it's so interesting because I think oftentimes we might think of therapists or psychologists as, kind of being in a headspace all the time, but being able to incorporate, and I bet you have opportunity as we begin talking about the Enneagram a little bit more to recognize, without even saying the word Enneagram to your girls, to your students, you recognize some stances and how one of them might need a little, encouragement in one area, right?
Yeah, 100%. And even outside of like an individual level, since I work with them in groups most of the time, I notice different patterns in like how they interact with each other and who steps into more of a leadership role versus not, and who's the team cheerleader, and, who's the one that's, calming people down. So yeah, I definitely notice that in the group dynamics a ton, I think.
Isn't that awesome? I love that.
Yeah.
We can just, without saying, oh, let me tap you on the shoulder and say, you must be an Enneagram too, because you're helping everybody. No, you just know the energy. So, okay. So how were you introduced to the Enneagram?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this ahead of time, and I really can't remember like the exact moment or the day or like even how exactly I found it. I just know that once I did, it was just like going down a hill at full speed. I was like, I must know everything there is to know about this. So I think the most clear memory I have of the beginning of kind of this journey was somehow finding the Enneagram Institute's website and sitting on my couch late one night, reading through the types, getting to type 9, and just like both this sense of feeling very like at home, like, oh my gosh, somebody out there really, really gets it. And then that immediately turning to like, oh my gosh, how is this so accurate?
I
There are some
know.
uncomfortable pieces about this that I knew about myself, but I didn't have words for it yet. Which I think I still go back and forth with that even to this day, as I keep learning about the types and my type specifically. It's like so wonderful and also can be uncomfy.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's like you find out and connect and feel validated and exposed all at the same time. And
Yes.
and originally I was like, are you telling me there's a whole group of people that feel or don't feel the way I feel? And it was that realization that it's not just me. And I don't have a problem. I have something I need to discover more about, mainly, the other emotions that sevens tend to disregard. But yeah, so you're saying really it was a pretty quick after you went through, I guess you started with type 1 and went through.
I really don't remember. I remember whenever I got to type 9, whatever order it was, that I was like, well, I need not look any further because there is nothing that could describe me more accurately than this does right in front of me.
That's just amazing. Because some people, as we know, truly struggle to find that home base. But when you know. So tell me what you do mostly in your practice. Who are your clients?
So I work with a lot of adolescents. That's kind of how I got my start in the field. But that's slowly shifted to balance out a little bit more to young adults and adults as well. Most people come to see me for either some sort of anxiety or depression, a lot of life transitions. And really, since I've started, sort of putting myself out there as an Enneagram informed therapist, working with a lot more people on just discovering themselves and their identity and what that means in their life.
How do you feel the younger people? Because I know you work with some teenagers and young adults. How do you feel they are receptive to something that's probably not something they heard of growing up?
Yeah. I mean, I find them to be very perceptive. I think what I try my best to do with teenagers specifically is to be careful about the whole idea of being a type does not mean that you have to live within that box, because they're in such a mess of their identity during that time of their lives anyway, that I'm like, I don't want you to attach completely to this and run away with it. But here's all of the ways that it can help you know yourself better. In addition to all the rest of the stuff that we work on. So I think with them, I try to be very careful about finding that balance, especially.
Perfect. We should be that way with everybody. It's
right.
I just wrapped up a course I was teaching online. And one of the things we talked about is, as much as we learn about our type, about each other's type, none of us have the same fingerprint. And if we don't share a fingerprint with anybody else on the entire planet, then how could we be in the box of one type? So I appreciate that you, of course you do, make that clear with your clients.
Yeah. I love the fingerprint analogy. I might have to steal that from you.
So like I said, we met in this coaching class, and now, in addition to everything that you do, are you sure you're not a 7? No, I'm kidding.
I'm very sure. Although that is
kidding.
one type that I was like, if I could swap, that would be kind of fun to be for like a week.
No, I'm just saying, because we love to do a lot of things at the same time. But you have now started actually a coaching, not a coaching, but an Enneagram program that I want you to describe, because I'm just, I'm looking at it and I was like, oh, that's just brilliant. The course description, the title, and the
Oh.
tagline. The tagline, oh, it's so good. So let me let you introduce that.
Yeah. So it's a group that a fellow therapist and I have started, and it's not actually, necessarily kind of framed as an Enneagram coaching program, but it ironically enough, in our very first session when we did the first series, all but one person there knew their type. So I got to automatically just start sort of like weaving that in with everything else that we'd already developed for the curriculum. So that was cool. But so it's called the Lotus Group. And I'll explain a little bit more about the title here in a second. But really the vision for it was not too long after New Year's this year. And I was sitting on my couch watching all these commercials for, New Year's resolutions and New Year, New Me and goals and all this stuff. And, that's fine. But I was texting my friend and I was like, none of these are realistic. None of these are rooted in self-compassion and acceptance and the willingness to just like shift when something isn't working for you. And I was like, what if there was a better way to like do this? What if we could, teach people or help people connect to one another in this way with their goals that didn't feel full of like shame or based in something that's wrong with them that they need to fix or anything like that. So that's kind of where it came from. And as we met over brunch to kind of hash some stuff out about what we wanted that to look like, the idea of the lotus flower came into play because of what it is. It roots in some really like crazy conditions like muddy waters or in like floodplains. And it just like takes hold wherever it's at, no matter what the circumstances are. And then the second piece of it was that it reblooms each day. And so it was kind of this idea of, we get to choose ourselves each day. We get to start over if we want to. We get to change the goals that we made if they're not working for us or not making us feel closer to ourselves. So that's kind of where it came from. And I think the Enneagram gives us a language and an understanding of the motivation behind why we want to rebloom each morning, and also like that space to kind of come back to yourself, home to yourself, essentially, within your type when you need to fall back on some of those protective factors that our types give us.
And say the tagline because it's just beautiful.
Plant, root, bloom, flourish.
I love that. It's just so succinct, and at the same time gives you a beautiful visual of the path that we all have to take, right? We all got to be planted somewhere to start before we can take root. And we have, in Atlanta, we have the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, and then we've got like a couple of, I think they're offshoots of the Atlanta Botanical in different parts of the town. It doesn't matter. They're beautiful gardens one way or the other. And I got to, just this last year, they made this beautiful little, of course, quiet area around the lotus pond, and with a little sign that kind of described how the process is. And it was like, wow, I find that so beautiful, that the whole plan of how it shows how we can bloom in any condition. I think one of the other ones that's the craziest thing to me is to see a volcano. Well, what happens? And then lo and behold, boom, centuries later, we have Hawaii.
Right.
Out of what looks so desolate and so murky, as you say, in those muddy waters. It's just finding that where you can bloom and come to life.
Yeah. It's amazing what happens when we give ourselves permission to like open back up each day too, or in each phase of our life that we're in. It's, awesome. We don't have to follow the path that we had originally laid out for ourselves if it's no longer working.
No, every day, like you said, every day we have a chance to start all over. Now, this is in person, right? And it's in Kansas City.
Yes. Yep. We meet in person. It's a smaller group. We cap it at 10 because we want to be able to have people really get to know each other and connect,
Oh,
and
yeah.
for us to be able to do that as well. So the way it's designed is it's a four series group. Each series is 4 weeks long. They do build off of one another, but you can definitely jump in like the third or fourth one and still get a ton out of it. So we're about to start the Root series next week, actually on Tuesday evening.
Oh, yay.
And then, yeah, we'll just keep going over the summer after that.
Okay. Well, I will put that in the show notes.
I
In
appreciate
Kansas
it.
City want to know how to get in touch with you, because I think the power of all of transformation, whether it be through the Enneagram or counseling or any of the other beautiful paths out there, there is no, one thing is the right way and the only way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's why I get, very protective of being able to say what you said in the beginning. The Enneagram is a doorway, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a common language. Maybe not for everybody, but it's becoming more of a common language. And if we have that common language, then we can explore further away from, like you said, becoming detached from the whole type learning, because it can be overwhelming if you start talking about the Enneagram to somebody that's relatively new, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah. Or it sounds crazy.
Yeah, I've been told that a time or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, or don't talk about that because I don't want you to think you have me figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get in my head.
Yeah. It's I've always, and especially more recently found it so interesting. I love that people share their types so openly, especially when they feel like they're with somebody who understands it. But I'm like, I do not want to underestimate the level of like vulnerability that affords me to know that about you, to know your type.
Oh, that's beautifully stated.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I'm gonna have to go back and when I'm looking use that in this description, because that truly is a vulnerable thing to share that with
Yeah, you just told me your worst fear and your greatest desire in a word or two.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love that. Very,
Yeah.
very good. So Ben, in the beginning of this, I said we met in a coaching program, and the beautiful lady who facilitated and taught this course was Vanessa Fernandez. And she just did her first retreat, which I'll take off my jealousy mask. I was not able to attend, but you did.
Yeah.
Was it just because it was for therapists and coaches? It was specifically geared towards those of us who are in the healing part of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we had a little bit of everyone there. There was definitely more than a few of us therapists. We tend to conglomerate. There were business coaches, there were Enneagram coaches, there were people that aren't necessarily involved in that yet, but they're working towards it. So there was lots of different people from different walks of life kind of coming into it together.
Not to mention it was in a really nice, beautiful space.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah, it felt like another little world for sure.
Oh, well, I think that what you're doing is, like I say, any of the times we're in a collective, we're a microcosm of what's going on in the world around us. And we may not be able to, travel to the other side of the world and teach, but I never, ever underestimate the power of changing one person, either their feeling about their worth, the accepting who they are. And I know this has to be what you see, because your therapist sessions are one-on-one, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I don't always get to hear about the ripple effect, but over the past few years of really coming into my own into this field, I trust that it's there.
It's there.
And I've seen it in my own life too. I mean, my own therapy has created a ripple effect for a lot of people in my life. And this retreat, I've not been able to yet kind of grasp the magnitude of what it feels a little bit more like a wave than a ripple, me coming back from that. Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing I take away from my work and this retreat, because that's been on my mind a lot recently since it just happened too, is that trust just in myself and in other people. And I think, again, having the framework of the Enneagram allows us to understand even more deeply, like what that trust can look like with ourselves and with others.
And the process. Trust the process. And for you to be able to, kind of pinpoint on a map where somebody is in the process, knowing that you can't go from point A to point Z. You can't walk before you crawl, all the analogies, but to be able to be a part of the page that these people are on in their process, you may not know for years to come. You may never personally know, but this is the law of the universe. How it works.
Yeah.
And
not to throw in another plant analogy, but apparently that's just my whole life. I talk about, especially with my teenagers too, like so much of my work with them is planting seeds. And I don't often get to see, well, I do get to see the roots take hold a little bit, but the blooming and the flourishing pieces of it, come later as they keep learning and growing in their lives. And so, done a lot of work within myself to trust that those seeds are good and needed and that they're going to serve them.
One of my favorite quotes that I have used for over 20 years is old men. That's the Greek proverb. It said men, but it's men and women. Old men plant trees in whose shade they'll never sit. This is trusting that your part of the process is leading to the shade that you may never be able to, but you're providing the seed, and somebody did for you and somebody did for your teacher. And that's the gift of honoring our part in the healing, but it all starts with our own, right?
Yes, 100%.
Which is what would have encouraged you to go on a retreat. I mean, good grief, if somebody stepped back and said, well, why would she? I mean, here she is, she's a licensed therapist, she's got all of this, her credentials. What is the importance that you see as continuing on our own here?
Gosh, I don't even know. I can't overstate it, because I think the importance is that no matter how many letters you have behind your name and how many degrees you hold, you're still a human, and you still are going to have parts of yourself that try and protect the more vulnerable parts of yourself. And while those are important and good, and you can lean on those sometimes, it's also, I think, a huge part of our work to be actively coming back to ourselves and trusting that we don't always need those defense mechanisms anymore, and having compassion for the reason that they were there in the first place. And so continuing to dig into that
absolutely
allows you to be the most human version of yourself. And not even version, just your most human self. And I always come back to, in my work, in my relationships, like I will be of the most service to other people when I am my most self.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Yes. I have a client who I was working with one-on-one recently, and she told me she'd been married for, I think, 40 years. And she said, my husband has lived with 5 different versions of myself since we've married. And that is why our work never stops, right? It doesn't mean we have, it's not like we beat ourselves up all the time, but each phase of our life is a whole different path. And I love that you acknowledge that and know that. Well,
it's necessary.
Because, oh my gosh, if you had tried to tell me things that I would go through at this stage in my life and how to deal with them when I may have been in my 20s, it would have not made any sense.
No, yeah.
Like, well, I would never do that. Well, yeah, you will. Or, yeah, because you can't do anything beyond what you have in front of you right now. So teach, that's what you're doing. You're teaching, here are the tools. And when you experience it at another level, then the tools are available to help you process there.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Well, this is I probably shouldn't bring this up, but you're doing something in about an hour or less.
Yep.
So no pressure here. In fact, when we were scheduling this call, it was like, Kelsi, no, let's not do this today. And here's what I love about this. Tell what you're fixing to do, and then I'm going to say something.
Yeah. So I'm getting ready to take my last ever licensing test. Hopefully this is the last kind of gate to being licensed at the highest level in Kansas. So at 3:15 today, I'm taking that test. Yeah.
Just because when y'all hear this, you won't know what time it is, but it's literally 45 minutes from now. She's going to take the test. Now, when I first talked to her about this, I was like, no, you need, let's reschedule and all this. And she was just like, I'll chill as a type 9.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I can see. You're like, no, I've prepared. I'm going to push you. In fact, you said this will be a good distraction. Now, not to call out your type 9-ness.
Let me just numb out from that anxiety for a little bit longer, please. Exactly. Thank you. So, I'll own it. That's fine.
No, it's because you're very, very prepared is the truth of the matter. So, but yeah, I loved that because I was like, who else could just reach that calm, that I'm that duck floating on the water.
Yep.
Except a type 9 who knows herself well and her material.
Oh. Yes.
So, I just thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'm going to wish you luck, but you don't need it.
No, I appreciate it anyways. I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll throw that out in the universe.
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you so much. Any final thoughts you want to share with the audience?
I don't think so. I loved getting to chat with you, and it literally anytime anyone will listen to me say anything about the Enneagram or doing your own work and coming home to yourself, I'm like, I will just go for as long as you want me to about that. So I really appreciate you giving this space.
Well, I thank you. I love that we share this common language, even states apart.
Yeah.
I don't know where Kansas is on the map.
Right in the middle, right smack dab in the middle of everything.
Somewhere. I tell people all the time, I grew up in Texas, and we just pretty much thought that was all we needed to know, because who was ever going to leave Texas? Here I am in Georgia.
There you are.
So thank you, Kelsi, and all of her contact information will be in the show notes. I hope you reach out to her if you're in Kansas, especially Kansas City, Kansas, not to confuse that with Kansas City, Missouri.
With Missouri. Yes. I'm only licensed in Kansas. So if you want to see me in that way, you got to come over the border. But
that's right.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. And we will talk soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.